Hatshepsut was the most powerful woman of her time. She ascended the throne of Egypt in 1478 BC and ruled Egypt for 20 years. Her husband, Thutmose II, was the son of Thutmose I. As the wife of Thutmose II, Hatshepsut initially ruled as regent to Thutmose III, a son of Thutmose II by another wife, and the first male heir. While Thutmose III had inherited the throne when he was about 2 years old, Hatshepsut continued to rule by asserting her lineage as the daughter and only living child of Thutmose I. Hatshepsut was one of the most prolific builders in ancient Egypt, commissioning hundreds of construction projects throughout both Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Many of these building projects were temples to build her religious bases and legitimacy beyond her position as wife of God Amun. At these temples, she performed religious rituals that had been exclusive prerogatives of kings, corroborating the evidence that Hatshepsut had assumed the traditional male role of a pharaoh. Notably, her buildings were better and more in number than those of her predecessors. Many pharaohs later attempted to claim some of her projects as theirs. She employed the great architect Ineni, who also had worked for her father, her husband, and for the royal steward Senenmut. During her reign, so many statues were produced that almost every major museum with ancient Egyptian artifacts in the world has Hatshepsut statues in their collection. The Hatshepsut Room in New York City's Metropolitan Museum of Art is dedicated solely to some of these pieces. The huge number of artifacts provide archaeological evidence of Hatshepsut's portrayal of herself as a male pharaoh, with masculine traits and traditional male ancient Egyptian way of dressing, such as a false beard and ram's horns. At the edge of the desert, 1 kilometer east, connected to the complex by a causeway, lies the accompanying valley temple. Across the river Nile, the whole structure points towards the monumental 8th pylon, Hatshepsut's most recognizable addition to the temple of Karnak, and the site from which the procession of the beautiful festival of the valley departed. The temple's twin functions are identified by its axis. Its main east-west axis served to receive the brack of Amun-Ra at the climax of the festival, while its north-south axis represented the life cycle of the pharaoh from coronation to rebirth. She had twin obelisks erected at the entrance to the temple, which at the time of their construction were the tallest in the world. Only one remains upright, which is the second tallest ancient obelisk still standing. The other one had toppled and broken. Following the tradition of most pharaohs, Hatshepsut had monuments constructed at the temple of Karnak. She also restored the original site of the great ancient goddess of Egypt at Karnak that had been ravaged by the foreign rulers during the Hyksos occupation. It later was ravaged by other pharaohs who took one part or another to use in their own pet projects. The precinct awaits restoration. The mortuary temple of Hatshepsut is a mortuary temple built during the reign of Pharaoh Hatshepsut of the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Located opposite the city of Luxor, it is considered to be a masterpiece of ancient architecture. Its three massive terraces rise above the desert floor and into the cliffs of Deir al-Bahari. Her tomb KV20 lies inside the same massif capped by Al-Qurn, a pyramid for her mortuary complex. This mortuary temple is dedicated to the longest ruling female of ancient Egypt, Hatshepsut. The temple is decorated with statues, sphinxes, and reliefs, which have been meticulously restored over time. Women had a relatively high status in ancient Egypt and enjoyed the legal right to own, inherit, or will property. A woman becoming pharaoh was rare. However, only Sobek Nefru and some other preceded her. In Egyptian history, there was no specific word for a queen regent as in contemporary history, king being the ancient Egyptian title regardless of gender. And by the time of her reign, pharaoh had become the name for the ruler. A queen regent is a female monarch equivalent in rank and title to a king who reigns in her own right over a realm known as kingdom, as opposed to a queen consort who is the wife of a reigning king, or a queen regent who is the guardian of a child monarch and rules temporarily in the child's stead, be it de jure in sharing power or de facto in ruling alone. Hatshepsut is not unique in taking the title of king. Sobek Nefru, ruling 6 dynasties prior to Hatshepsut, also did so when she ruled Egypt. Hatshepsut had been well trained in her duties as the daughter of a pharaoh. During her father's reign, she held the powerful office of God's wife. She had taken a strong role as queen to her husband and was well experienced in the administration of a kingdom by the time she became a pharaoh. There is no indication of challenges to her leadership, and until her death, her co-regent remained in a secondary role, quite amicably, heading her powerful army, which would have given him the power necessary to overthrow her and to assume his rightful place if that had been the case. Hatshepsut assumed all the regalia and symbols of the pharaonic office in official representations. The cut head cloth topped with the uraeus and the traditional false beard. Many existing statues alternatively show her in typically feminine attire, as well as those that depict her in the royal ceremonial attire. However, after the end of this period of transition, most formal depictions of Hatshepsut as pharaoh showed her in the royal attire, with all the pharaonic regalia, and her previous feminine depictions were carved over again to make her look masculine. Hatshepsut was ambitious and androgynous in many of her statues and monuments. She would create a masculine version of herself to establish herself in the Egyptian patriarchy. She also named herself Matkare, or Truth is the soul of the sun god. This name emphasized the pharaoh Matkare Hatshepsut's connection to one of the many evolutions of Amun, while referring to a pharaoh's responsibility to maintain Mat harmony through respecting tradition. Moreover, the Osirian statues of Hatshepsut, as with other pharaohs, depict the dead pharaoh as Osiris, with the body and regalia of that deity. All the statues of Hatshepsut at her tomb follow that tradition. The promise of resurrection after death was a tenet of the cult of Osiris. Hatshepsut had begun constructing a tomb while she was the royal wife of Thutmose II. Still, the scale of this was not suitable for a pharaoh. So, when she ascended the throne, preparation for another burial started. For this, KV20, originally made for her father Thutmose I, and probably the first royal tomb in the Valley of the Kings, was extended with a new burial chamber. Hatshepsut also refurbished her father's burial and prepared for a double interment of both Thutmose I and her within KV20. Therefore, it is likely that when she died, she was put in this tomb along with her father. During the reign of Thutmose III, however, a new tomb, KV38, together with new burial equipment, was provided for Thutmose I, who then was removed from his original tomb and put elsewhere. At the same time, Hatshepsut's mummy might have been moved into the tomb of her nurse in KV60. It is possible that Amenhotep II, son to Thutmose III by another wife, was the one who was instrumental in taking these actions to ensure his own right to succession. Besides what was recovered from KV20 during Howard Carter's clearance of the tomb in 1903, other funerary furniture belonging to Hatshepsut has been found elsewhere, including a lioness bedstead, a Senate game board with carved lioness head, red jasper game pieces bearing her pharaonic title, a signet ring, and a partial Shabti figurine bearing her name. In the royal mummy at DB320, a wooden canopic box with an ivory knob was found that was inscribed with the name of Hatshepsut and contained a mummified liver or spleen as well as a molar tooth. There was a royal lady of the 21st dynasty of the same name, and for a while it was thought that possibly it could have belonged to her instead. Towards the end of the reign of Thutmose III and into the reign of his son, an attempt was made to remove Hatshepsut from certain historical and pharaonic records. This elimination was carried out in the most literal way possible. Her statues and images were chiseled off from some stone walls, leaving very obvious Hatshepsut shaped gaps in the artwork. Ways of erasing ranged from full destruction of any mention of a name or image by replacing and inserting Thutmose I or II where Hatshepsut once stood. There were also instances of smoothing patchwork jobs that covered Hatshepsut's carvings. Example of this can be seen on the walls of the Dar al-Bahari temple. Simpler methods also included covering where new stone was added to fully cover reliefs or sacred stone work. The removal of Hatshepsut's memories seems to have a direct link to gender bias narratives in the ancient Egyptian social structures. Although she did not hold queen's status, her reign was disregarded and even erased, though truly her reign can be considered more successful than that of some other pharaonic reign. With expanding borders during her tenure, it can be seen as a threat to traditional gender roles. This raises questions about the conflict between power and traditional gender roles. We are more aware of Cleopatra, who came into prominence after a gap of 14 centuries. She was queen of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt from 51 to 30 BC and its last active ruler. A member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, she was a descendant of its founded Ptolemy I Soter, a Macedonian Greek general and companion of Alexander the Great. After the death of Cleopatra, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, making the end of the second to last Hellenistic state and the age that had lasted since the reign of Alexander. Her native language was Greek, and she was the only Ptolemaic ruler to learn the Egyptian language.